A lot of really good comments here already from everybody in the comments. First off, thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate you guys. But Scott started it kind of off. He goes 15-15 record with the third best ERA in baseball. He says shows how bad the offense is and has struggled at times this year. And he says hashtag sign Judge, and Jack R follows that up that he agrees, and he says that Judge is his number one target. And I think from that angle, I don't think Judge is going to be worth the money. And I know people are going to hate me for that because the guy's got 62 bombs. And here's the difference is you can find guys that can hit for power that are going to probably cost a hell of a lot less than Aaron Judge is in the offseason. You know what I mean? And, there's guy. I mean, if they sign a Turner's got 20 bombs this year. Like, that's a guy that hits for some slug. I think you're going to see more slug out of a guy like Nico Horner next year. I think you're going to see more slug out of Seiya Suzuki next year. Like, there is still power in this lineup. Obviously not Aaron Judge power, but when you're 6'7" and you make baseballs look like tennis balls, it's normal. But I really think they can maybe add one or two bats of power with that money that it would take to get Judge. Don't get me wrong. If Judge wants to come and the dollars make sense, cool. But also reminding people that Judge is also 30 years old. Like, this isn't a guy who's some, 20, and in fairness, Turner is too, and, these guys are getting older. But, there's no guarantee that he's going to even put up 50 consistently over the next couple of years. Now, granted, I mean, if he's still hitting 40 bombs a year, that's fucking awesome. But not when he's getting paid like a 60 home run hitter. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, do they really need him, though? Because you already have a crowded outfield, right? You got to worry about where PCA and Brennan Davis going to play. Where's Ian Happ going to play? Where's, Seiya Suzuki going to play? And you really can't – I mean, you could DH him, I guess, but he's a good enough athlete where you want to play him in the field. So, plus I think the New York Mets are just going to –
that was going to be my response to that.
Yeah.
I think Aaron Judge may end up getting a stake in the Mets by the time that, that contract is finally inked. I too, I love the idea of adding power to the lineup. It all comes down to the way, what way does Jed and company, I always keep saying, I love the Jed and company line. We need our own little t-shirt, Jed and company Cubs on tap, starting this all Jed and company run. It's much like Dead and Company. Maybe we can do something with the designing on that. So it all depends on what they believe they want this ball club to look like. Yep. I like Judge, don't get me wrong, but if you're signing Judge to be just a DH, it's a lot of money to just run into your DH slot. Like you said, you want him to play. And if they're going to play him and still have Ian Happ, that means you're shifting Ian Happ back to center field, which all things show from the course of the year, Ian Happ has been largely defensively valuable at his position in left field. So they're going to have to find, obviously, a place to put him. And with a caliber player like that, you find a spot if he wants to be here. With that said, I don't think he's going to hit the open market. I think that the Yankees will very much so be in his ear from the minute the offseason starts and say, hey, let's get this locked down. What do you want? Because they can't afford to let him go. I love the idea of it, though. That is exactly what the Cubs have to add this offseason. They have to add some pop for this lineup. And I think maybe, in a lot of ways, it may come internally. Guys like Mash Mervis, guys like, Brennan Davis, like we talked about. There'll be a lot of internal moves, I think, that may address that maybe that opens up the Cubs to maybe grab another guy like Xander Bogaerts, who, is great with the bat, is able to, poke the ball all around, make you play straight up. And I think that that's kind of maybe all things that we've heard coming out of Cubs camp and things like that, what they believe in. They've kind of moved away from the let's pack it with bombers and see how far we go. Mm-hmm. We just talked about the White Sox. The White Sox did a lot of that, and you end up with a station-to-station ball club that can't field. That's exactly what the Cubs don't want to run into. I want to kind of shed a light on a guy who I think is playing really good baseball down the stretch, and I didn't believe much in him, and I still kind of don't, but I'm curious to hear but McKinstry, that guy plays such great defense. And it's interesting to see him end with a great, kind of end of his season, kind of keeping, that momentum going. And we talked about, him coming over and them trading for him, at this deadline. Yeah. And it's a great value to have a guy like that can play around the field. I think it's just very understated how well he's played over the course of this. And I wanted to give him his due because he's a guy that we talked about on this, that you're saving tons of money for positions that you could potentially invest in. With that money that you are saving, how many times does a team go out and gets a utility man and it becomes expensive? You look at what Ben Zobrist was to the Cubs. Yeah, that contract absolutely was worth every penny. But it was expensive for what he was. He's a guy who put the bat on the ball. He had some power, but he could play around the field and be that for you. I'm not saying that McKinstry's going to be that, but I do hope that he could be some type of form of that, because if you're able to add a man like that as your 26th man on the roster, that is so valuable at the amount of money that he'll be making, over the course of the next couple seasons. It's much like what I think Theo Epstein was trying to do with David Bodie. Yes. Before David Bodie was hurt. Mm-hmm. But with that said, I look at his play over the course of this last couple runs of games here and a couple series as well. He's played very well for the last couple months, or like month and a half-ish. I think he's been pretty good. It's just interesting to see, and I wanted to make sure that I gave him, a little bit of the shout out, because I am seeing it. And I'm absolutely seeing, a lot of guys on this Cubs team come back and have good caps to the end of the season. Christopher Morel is one of them. He was kind of dragging going into this last, September month. And there's a lot of talk. We had to talk on this show about, should he be sent down? Does he deserve the at-bats? And yeah, absolutely. He's kind of putting the cherry on the top of his season. Has it been fantastic? No, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for him. He had a space of baseball where he wasn't playing well. But that's the type of attitude you want in a young player. Hey, I'm not playing too good. I know I'm not, but I'm going to keep going into the hitting cage and getting work and making sure that when I take my at-bats, I'm taking it seriously all the way to the end, because that's exactly what this end of the season looks like. If he can cap it and then have some momentum, figure out what he's got to work on, and come back with that confidence. Hey, I didn't hit well for a couple months, but at that end of the year, I really turned it around and I had a good run at going into the offseason. That's so valuable. I think Scott actually commented in there how valuable off seasons are in one of the last shows we had. And I cannot agree with him anymore on that. Off-season baseball is exactly why guys like Nico Horner break out. And you look and see how strong he got. And now you're talking about having a pillar there, a guy that you don't have to worry about, a guy who's very cost-effective, over the course of the next couple of years. And that's what wins. That's what allows you to go and get a Jason Hayward, who, you thought was going to work out, but you're in the running for a big market player, right, on a big team. You're able to be that big team, and you're able to flex your muscles financially even more. And I think there's a lot of great that we looked at over the course, and even this series. I'm going to give the Pirates a lot of credit, man. They got a lot of great talent. If they could ever put it all together, that Pirates team would be pretty scary. I mean, Reynolds may be the hottest hitter in baseball right now. That's how good that guy's been over the course of the last couple months. And the Cubs beat a team that on record wise aren't nothing to really talk about. But if you look at what's on the field and what they're building over there, it's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of taking each, of your points in stride here, Juice. First off, speaking of Mash Mervis, Scott says, holy fuck, Mervis just hit number 36 because the Iowa Cubs are playing tonight. Yeah, that guy's got power, clearly. He's shown it at the minor league level. Like he's in all-time conversation in terms of Cub minor leaguers for home runs in a season, right? I mean, he was, going into when was this the other day? Going into like late last week, he was at 34? I mean, he's already at 36. I think Baez had 37 in 1 year, so he's chasing Javi. And then I don't know if he's going to catch KB. KB had I think it was 43 or 42 in that one season before he came up. But
man, he should have never been down there that long.
Absolutely the fuck not. But it just goes to show, right? how good Mervis has been in terms of power. And sometimes you find that power from within. Bring up Mervis next year, maybe. Again, more breakout from guys like Seiya and Nico in the slugging department. Morel can hit for power. Morel's got like 15 home runs, and he hasn't even played the whole season. You know what I mean?
And
like,
I think Brendan Davis is a big key to this too.
Absolutely.
I mean, if Brendan Davis comes back healthy, that's 20 bombs right there. I mean, he has that capability to be that 25, 30 home run hitter in center field who plays, spectacular defense as well. So I think that off season is going to be really interesting because I think it's going to paint a picture on how much they value each player, not only on the roster right now, but even in like the minor leagues. Because it'll be indicative on how confident they are at each position going forward. Like if they go out and get like a first baseman, and Mash Mervis isn't somebody that it'll clearly mean that they don't believe the hype of the power, which I don't think that they're gonna. He's young. I think that they're gonna try to give that run to him for next year. But it'd be interesting to see like which positions they target, because if they do go out and they get a center fielder. Like, let's say the Judge is in play. He's played center sometimes this year, or they feel like they can move Ian Happ back to center field. It'll be interesting to see the fallout on Brendan Davis. That would mean that they have insider information, which they should, on how healthy that back really is going to be and how much that's going to limit him going forward. That would be interesting news to see. So I want to just let all of our listeners know that the offseason moves will definitely tell a lot of things. It'll tell how quickly they think they can compete, and it'll also tell you what they think of our favorite players. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak from here and, around like the conversations we had, because they may sign a guy at a position where you had a player typed in that you thought was going to be something. And that doesn't mean that he won't be, right? But it'll show how much they believe in that player. So Absolutely. I think that that's a big thing that we need to, highlight going forward on the show as we kind of turn from this season, the 2022 season, into the offseason.